Good morning, everyone. Make sure that this fancy thing is working. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andy Waldron, and I am going to tell you a story today. But we're also going to make sure that we have time for people to get on. So the story we're reading today is called Wombat Stew. Wombat Stew. Have you heard of a wombat before? That could be kind of a new word, a new kind of animal that you may not have heard of before. So here we have Wombat Stew. There we go. By Marcia K. Vaughn and Pamela Lofts. Now, in order to think out what these animals are, because there's some new animals in this book, I brought some little mini figures to help out. So first, this is a wombat. Yeah, this is a little wombat. Now, what does a wombat remind you of? What does this wombat remind you of? He's kind of like a fluffy little bear cub kind of thing. They're small. They're a smaller animal. Maybe more like a rodent or like a river otter or, well, not a river otter, but something small and rodenty. Okay, so this is one of the characters of the book, the wombat. And the wombat is going to be trying to be eaten by a dingo. By a dingo. Here is a little figure of a dingo. What does a dingo remind you of? As you can see, a dingo kind of looks like a dog. They're a little lighter in color. It's like a dog, fox, wolf kind of animal, right? So the dingo in this story is going to try to eat the wombat, which, as you can imagine, the wombat doesn't really want to be eaten. There are some other characters in the story as well. One of the characters we're going to meet is a platypus. Okay, here's a little figure of a platypus. Notice that a platypus has a long flat tail that it can scoop mud with. It also has a duck bill. Sometimes they're called duck-billed platypus. Okay, it's got little claws on its feet and it's got webbed feet. That is a platypus. It's kind of a neat little animal, isn't it? Also in this story is an emu. Okay, this is the little figure of an emu. Notice that it's kind of like a bird. Yeah, kind of different. And it's got a long neck and big feathers. And then another character in this story is a koala. And here's a little figure of a koala. Notice that it's like a little bear. This one has a little baby on its back so that they can climb trees, because koala bears climb trees. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the story. So Wombat Stew by Marcia K. Vaughn and Pamela Lofts. Little cover page here. One day, on the banks of the Billabong, a very clever dingo caught a wombat. As you can see here, we've got the dingo. And look, inside of his bucket, there is the backside of a wombat. Now, billabong might also be a new word. A billabong is another term for a lake. Okay, it's a lake basically, or a pond. And the dingo decided to make, he's very, very happy. Look at that big bucket of water he's got there. He decided to make, now I didn't warn you about this, but this book has songs in it. Okay, now I am not known for my singing, but we're going to try it out. And if you want, you can try singing it together. And the song goes, this side of the page. Wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy, wombat stew. Kind of a fun song, isn't it? Do you want to try it with me? Okay, here we go. Wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy, wombat stew. Kind of a fun song. And look, we've got the little wombat peering out of his bucket like, I don't know if I want to be eaten. Would you want to be eaten by a dingo? I don't think I would either. Platypus came ambling up the bank. "Good day, dingo," he said, snapping his bill. What is all that water for? We've got our platypus there. There we go. I'm brewing up a gooey, chewy stew with that fat wombat, replied Dingo with a toothy grin. Can you give us your best toothy grin as if you were the dingo? And kind of creepy too, I guess. If you ask me, said Platypus, the best thing for a gooey stew is mud. Big blops of billabong mud. Blops of mud, Dingo laughed. What a good idea. Righto, in they go. You can see Dingo thinking about what his stew might taste like with mud in it. So Platypus scooped up big blops of mud with his tail and tipped them into the billy can. You can see the platypus scooting in some mud into the bucket. Do you think it would taste good with mud in it? Have you ever had food with mud in it before? I don't think it tastes very good, and I don't think you should try. This is a story, remember, and not an actual cooking book, so keep the mud out of your food. Around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang. You ready for a song? Here we go. Wombat stew, gooey, brewy, yummy, chewy, wombat stew. Notice the dingo here is dancing around that pot. Waltzing out from the shades of the iron banks came Emu. Let's see Emu here. She arched her graceful neck over the brew. Oh, Dingo, she fluttered, what have we here? Gooey, chewy wombat stew, boasted Dingo. Look how happy that dingo is. He's got his tongue out and he's licking his lips. Can you do that too? A big, oh, that looks really tasty. There we go. If only it were a bit more chewy, she sighed. But don't worry, a few feathers will set it right. Feathers, Dingo smiled. That would be chewy. Righto, in they go. So into the gooey brew, Emu dropped her finest feathers. Have you ever had feathers in food? I don't know if it would taste that great, but it's a story we'll find out. Around and around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang. There we go. And it's time for that song again. But notice that the words are changing. Wombat stew, crunchy munchy for my lunchy, wombat stew. See, that's some fun words. Notice we've got Dingo dancing around there. And we've got Emu, Platypus, and Wombat hanging out. Old Blue Tongue, the lizard, came sliding off the sun-soaked stone. And here's Blue Tongue, the lizard. What is his tongue? It's got a blue tongue. Silly Dingo, he hissed. There are no flies in this stew. Can't be wombat stew without crunchy flies in it. And he stuck out his bright blue tongue. There's a lot to be said for flies, agreed Dingo, rubbing his paws together. Righto, in they go. So Lizard snapped 100 flies from the air with his long tongue and flipped them into the gooey, chewy stew. And notice there's the lizard. Look at all the flies on his tongue. And look, there are flies in the air. Have you ever had flies in your food? I don't know about that. I've tried crickets before, but I've never tried eating flies. Around and around and around the bubbling billy, Dingo danced and sang, wombat stew, crunchy munchy for my lunchy, wombat stew. And look how happy that dingo is. And look at that stew. That's some funky looking stew. Again, we have the emu, the platypus, the blue-tongued lizard. Okay. Up through the red dust popped echidna. Now, we did not talk about echidnas beforehand because I don't have a little figure for that. But what do we notice about echidnas? Yeah, what do we notice? Look, it's got some spikes on its back, kind of like a porcupine. And it's got a little snout and got some claws. And notice that it says up through the red dust. So maybe echidnas live underground. Wait a bit. Not so fast, he bristled, shaking the red dust from his quills. Now I've been listening to all this advice. And take it from me, for a munchy stew, you need slugs and bugs and creepy crawlies. Now, notice Dingo. Does he look like he's big into slugs and bugs and creepy crawlies? We'll find out. Dingo wagged his tail. Why, I should have thought of that. Righto, in they go. You can see Dingo and Echidna hanging out and thinking about that. So Echidna dug up all sorts of creepy crawlies and dropped them into the gooey, chewy, crunchy stew. Look at all those bugs and slugs. Now, does it look like those bugs and slugs are happy to be going into the stew? What do you think? And those are some weird-looking bugs and slugs, aren't they? Yeah. Have you ever eaten insects like that? The very clever Dingo stirred and stirred, all the while singing, you guessed it, it's a song time. Wombat stew, hot and spicy, oh so nicey, wombat stew. We've got the other animals hanging out and watching. We have the wombat, the echidna, the platypus, the emu, and we haven't talked about this little guy, but that is a kookaburra bird, and he's been in every picture. Have you seen him in the pictures already? Just then, the sleepy-eyed koala climbed down the scribbly gum tree. Look here, he yawned. Any bush cook knows you can't make spicy stew without gum nuts. See the koala coming down the tree and Dingo sitting by his fire. Leave it to Koala to think of gum nuts, Dingo laughed and licked his whiskers. Righto, in they go. And into the gooey, chewy, crunchy, munchy stew, Koala shook lots and lots of gum nuts. And you can see going into his stew are these gum nuts. Isn't that kind of neat? That stew has a lot of interesting ingredients. Aha! Cried Dingo. Now my stew is missing only one thing. What's that? Asked that animals. That fat wombat. And look, Dingo is going for the wombat. Uh-oh, it might not look so good for that wombat. Wait! Stop! Hang on, Dingo! You can't put that wombat in the stew yet. Look at all the animals. The kookaburra, the emu, the koala, the platypus, the echidna, and the blue-tongued lizard are all telling him to wait. Why not? You haven't tasted it. Righto, I'll taste it. And that very clever Dingo bent over the billy and took a great big slurp of stew. Now let's think about this stew. What does it have for ingredients? It has water, it has feathers and mud and slugs and bugs and gum nuts and flies. Let's make a prediction. Do you think the dingo will like eating feathers, gum nuts, flies, bugs, mud, and feathers? Let's find out. Can you make your best dingo, this is really gross sound? Not a good sound. I'm poisoned, he howled. You've all tricked me. And that is not a happy dingo picture. And he dashed away deep into the bush, never again to sing. Wombat stew, gooey brewy, yummy chewy wombat stew. And there's the music there. Don't quiz me on the music, because I don't know if my music is as good as their music. Their music is probably a lot better. So that is the story of Wombat Stew by Marcia K. Vaughn and Pamela Lofts. Now, before I go, I want to tell you a little story about this book. So I got to go to Australia, and I went to a bookstore with a friend who I made there. And I said, what is the Australian kids book? What is like the big book from Australia? And my friend said, Wombat Stew. So I encourage you, when you go on travels, to stop in bookstores and say, what is a great book from this part of the country or this part of the world? And find new books in different places. With that, I'm going to leave you for today. Again, Wombat Stew, a great book. And let me find my little figures here. A story about Dingo and a story about Wombat. And all the friends that go to rescue poor little Wombat from being eaten by the crafty and yet kind of foolish Dingo. Have a great day. Bye.